Bitcoin is currently viewed as a risk-on asset, and you think it will be increasingly viewed as a risk-off asset. How do you see Bitcoin playing into the milieu of all this, and then how do you see public perception of Bitcoin?
Yeah, and I don't know if it would necessarily be risk-off, but more trading in correlation with gold rather than with the NASDAQ.
Which gold is risk-off, right?
It is in some sense, but if you look at it, last year was a bit of a risk-on year. Equities did great, but so did gold, right? So gold
I think that's a testament that how strange the waters we are in are.
Yeah.
Like you see weird things, like things that are typically inverse now.
I would say positive. More anti-dollar than risk-off. Okay. Like I would say go from a risk asset, like it's an NVIDIA, to an anti-dollar asset, which I think gold and to a lesser extent silver is. So it would become the anti-dollar, right? And that would break that correlation, with the NASDAQ. And I think that would be huge for Bitcoin as like a moment of maturity and acceptance and what it is, because a lot of people in TradFi and these hedge funds, and when they're moving it, they just think of it as a trade. Like, how do I get the beta? Let me go in and buy it. And the second, technical level, the 100 days broken, let me dump it all. And once people start saying, okay, this is something different here. We've got our hands on it. And I think that's going to be driven grassroots the way Bitcoin has been, which is people from the bottom up are going to say, no, I'm not selling it like a share of NVIDIA. I'm not buying this Bitcoin just to try to ride it for a 10% pop and get rid of it. I'm seeing it differently. And that's going to be a huge change. So I think that's part of what could happen this year, which would, and now you're asking, like, how does Bitcoin play into this big strategy? So we covered a lot of ground. We talked about, civil issues that are out there, geopolitical issues that are out there, economic issues. And then, we've seen a little bit of this, co-opting of Bitcoin and the whole crypto space, right? Trump coming to Nashville, right? So, I think Trump in 2020, he realized, like, he thought he should have won, but he was outspent, and he's like, I need money. I need the tech bros and the crypto bros, and I'll go to Nashville and I'll say what I need to say, and we're going to do this. That said, he has put people around him that I think are very serious about this. But they could be wolves in sheep's clothing, and wolves in the hen house with some of Howard Lutnick, who at Cantor Fitzgerald, and they're the ones that are backstopping all the Treasury bills for Tether and the different spaces that he's put into Commerce Secretary. You have Senator Loomis, who's the crypto queen, and she creates these bills like stablecoin bill, Genius bill. And all those bills do is say Tether, Circle, all that. Guess what? Every single T-bill you have, it has to be now held with a Federal Reserve depository institution. And Loomis, you say, why Loomis? She's from Wyoming. She's putting carve-outs in those bills to allow for state-chartered banks, and that's a huge business in Wyoming. People think of Wyoming of ranches, but there's a bunch of state-chartered trust funds and banks that they can continue to issue stable coins, but that they need a subsidiary, like a sub-custodian. A sub-custodian is the term used, that is a Federal Reserve depository institution. So a state, so it all gets in there. Why does it have to be in there? Because if they're going to flood the zone with T-bills, then they need that money to be at Federal Reserve depository institutions to continue their fractional reserve banking, central banking nightmare that we've all been living in. So a lot of these bills and these heroes and these speeches and things, in my opinion, and people can totally disagree with me and everything else, but I'm very skeptical of the Bitcoin strategic reserve being a good thing, of the stable coins coming under federal, like the litigation or the legislation that's coming out. When you actually read the bills and you look at it and you have an eye that knows how these things work, you see what they're doing there. You see how they're just moving the whole thing under their control. And so that's why, like, I think for the long run, if the federal government didn't open up a big, would it be good for a price pop in the short term? Yes, if they announce they're going to do it. But on the other hand, I think in the long run, Bitcoin doesn't need that, Just like gold didn't need
right.
to be pegged to the dollar for it to really soar from $35 to $800 an ounce. So I think what they're hoping to do is to add Bitcoin into this mix. So they can take that 200,000 or whatever that number is of confiscated Bitcoin, add that in there, have that as a monetized asset that backs these treasury bonds. They can use that when they need to do like QE, right? So if they go into the market to buy, then they know that's going to jack up the price. But they've got the holdings in the sovereign wealth fund. So what that's going to do, mark to market, it's going to jack up the sovereign, right? Like they can influence the price by spending $5 billion on Bitcoin, but it jacks up their 200 billion in holdings or 300 billion in holdings, 20%. You know, so these are all going to be ways that I think the executive branch is essentially trying to take away the monetary levers from the Federal Reserve by being able to incorporate money printing into a Treasury activity, a Treasury Department activity. And so while I see positive aspects to this, right? Like I'm the type of guy, I'm not going to sit here and, you know, say every single thing that Trump does is great or everything he does is bad or, you know, whatever. Like I look at ideas, I try to look at them through a lens and say what I am, you know? So political leanings aside, this is just what I see happening. You know what I mean? And I see that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I mean, I forget who said it, but he said something about like the Federal Reserve Act, if that were ever amended and the Treasury could just print money directly, right, to pay its bills, that would definitively be the road to hyperinflation for the U.S. dollar. And it sounds like what you're getting at here, right? That the Treasury is going to claw back some of this power that it's given away. I don't know, was taken away, whatever. Read The Creature from Jekyll Island. It lost, right? These powers of issuing and controlling the national currency were ceded to this private organization called the Federal Reserve. And if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying you see that coming back through a lot of these acts, but that is not inherently a good or a bad thing. Sounds like it could be bad for the dollar. Well,
I think at the end of the day, it is bad for the dollar. I think they're rejiggering the systems. And look, 1913, they did not only the Federal Reserve Act, they also did the Income Act,
income tax bill. Yeah.
And there was a reason why they needed, the Federal Reserve, which the reserve banks, the 12 reserve banks, which are owned by commercial banks, they needed banks because they needed the gold the banks had. Yeah. Right? Yeah. When we went off of anything related to gold, we didn't need, because the central bank's always been a way for the government to essentially borrow money from rich people through the banking system to have gold. This is like in our first episode, if people go back and watch it, we talk about the history of Bank of England, 1694. Yeah. William III needed money, went to rich people. They wouldn't lend him gold because he had defaulted on debts. But they said, I tell you what, we'll loan you we'll give you the gold to pay your soldiers and build your ships to fight France if you give us the ability to print money, the exclusive ability to print money. And then what we'll do is we'll collect gold from people, we'll give them paper notes, and then we'll funnel that gold to you. And that's basically what the central bank does. Now, when gold goes away, right, it becomes just a money printing. And so the Federal Reserve has been around, not because we need to borrow gold from rich people, but it's been a bit of a check on the executive branch from just doing what they want or Congress doing what they want.
Just a segregation of powers there,
and it hasn't always been there. During World War II, it wasn't there. Yeah. Whatever FDR said, they did. He said short-term rates 0.3%, 10-year 2.5%. Fed, you're going to do what you need to do, and they did it. And then they had the Fed Treasury Accord in 1951, where they got some independence back. But what I'm saying is they're trying to take the whole thing. And if you think about it, also take a look at tariffs. Tariffs are another executive fiat type issue, right? It doesn't have to go through a legislative elected branch. So if you start getting actual revenues through tariffs, and you can revalue gold with executive order, which is money, like you all of a sudden are building essentially a dictatorship. Now, I actually voted for Trump. I like Trump. I really do. But we've got to be careful about some of these policies because maybe Trump's doing it for an art of a deal, short-term fix type of a situation. Right. But we're investing a lot of control into the executive branch with a lot of these moves. And we're not, we can't hope for beneficent, dictators, right?
Sure.
And so we need to be careful of what's going on here with this stuff, and not just get all rah. All right, great, Doge, do it, and Cynthia, go on with your Bitcoin bill, and Bitcoin to the moon, and this is where we're going, and then we look back in 5 or 10 years and we say, what the hell did we just do?
Yeah,
we just basically created an executive branch with monetary powers, with taxation powers through tariffs, with
got military power already.
Yeah. What did we just do? Yeah.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.